Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grieving process. Join Dave and his guests now as they share practice tips and tools that you can start using immediately to help get you through this day. Now, here's your caregiver host, Dave Nassaney.
From Los Angeles. No, actually, I lied. From Waikiki, Honolulu, Hawaii. A big aloha welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I am Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, coming to you live and on demand, 24/7 on 14 global platforms. And we have an exciting show planned for you today with my lovely co-host, Adrienne Gruberg of the Caregiver Space. Say hello, Adrienne.
Hello.
And today, Adrienne and I will be interviewing Syndee Hendricks, author of Me, Harvey, and Alzheimer's, How I Kept My Husband Coherent for a Decade Plus with Alzheimer's Disease. So before we get started, I want to take this moment and thank my last week's guest, Betty O'Brien, veteran of the United States Air Force. We salute you. A full-time caregiver to her son who had a very rare brain tumor and is very involved with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and is an advocate on Capitol Hill and her community for increased caregiver financial respite support. You can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on my website, caregiverdave.com, or on all the other networks, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, etc. All right, enough of that. Hey, a big welcome to my guest, Syndee Hendricks. Hi, Syndee.
Good morning, Dave.
How are you?
Having a wonderful life. How about you?
Me too. It's easy to do that in Hawaii.
Yes.
So I'm so excited to have you. What I like to do is ask my guests just who is Syndee Hendricks and why was she put on this earth? What is your mission, Syndee?
Well, since I have been a child, my mission is to help people. So it comes to no surprise I'm writing a book on how people can help their loved ones, right?
Yes. Is that the title I mentioned?
No, it's Me, Harvey, and ALZ, How I Kept My Husband Coherent for a Decade Plus with Alzheimer's.
That's the title. That's the title. I mentioned that. So when is it due out?
Well, I am hoping for the next few weeks. And with this being Alzheimer's month, it would be very appropriate to publish this month.
Yeah. And, I didn't even realize that yesterday was Suicide Prevention Day.
Yeah.
It was a day for something. I could have done my my suicide segment on something, but these things just creep up on you. I think there's a website that tells you what day or what week or what
Right.
month it is. There's like hundreds, maybe even thousands of them. So if you are doing something, there is probably a day that they're celebrating it.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Syndee, tell us why. Oh, you just did tell us why you were put on this earth. You gave us the short answer. That's good.
Yes.
Let's get right into this. How did you become a caregiver? I know that seems like an obvious question, but a lot of people don't know.
Yes. Well, when you're married, you take the vow that you're together forever no matter what, right? So
That's how it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And my husband and I both were married twice before, and the first two didn't take for either one of us. And if you can believe it, after 20 years, we have never had a fight.
I believe it because that's kind of how my wife and I were when we were dating for 15 months. I said, I better grab this woman before I kick myself in the butt the rest of my life, that I let true love get away. A woman who doesn't argue, imagine that.
Exactly.
We have since had a few arguments, but...
Well, ours, ours are just maybe a few disagreements, but never an argument, never cross words. And he's just one of those special guys. And I know for a fact if things were reversed and if I were the one who was experiencing a debilitating disease, he would be doing the very same thing for me.
Really? There are so many caregiver spouses that cannot say that. Because, it takes a special kind of person to be a caregiver. It doesn't mean they don't love you unconditionally and all of that stuff. But some people, and I'm sure you know some, maybe some of your siblings, they just like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I'll put you in a home.
Well, most people don't do well there, right? They just don't do well there.
No, the home, your home is the best, choice, obviously. But in the event that they need 24/7 care, a lot of caregivers have made the promise to their loved ones or to their father on their dying deathbed,
Right.
don't ever put your mother in a nursing home, or I'll come back and haunt you. And they're bound by this guilt-ridden promise, because if your loved one, God forbid, a day comes where they need to get 24/7 care. I mean, no human being can provide 24/7 care. And so I always tell them, go back and break that promise. Tell them, instead, I will make sure that you get the best care available for your needs.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying, and I'm very appreciative to you for being that kind of a caregiver. And you were so lucky to get a husband who doesn't argue, and who also would do the same to you. So he must be a very compassionate and loving and giving person as well.
You know what? Harvey is the best man I know, even today.
That's great.
And we have a really special story of how we met.
Tell
Would
us
you like
that
to
story.
hear?
I love a great love story. I tell my love story all the time.
Well, I had been divorced for a couple of years, and my older brother offered to set me up, and I thought, oh my God, I'm 40 years old and my older brother's trying to set me up.
It doesn't get any worse than that.
How embarrassing is that? So I started dating, and the first two men that I met were both married and failed to mention that fact. And so I decided to join a dating service because, men can't hide that kind of expense. So I was on my way meeting all these great guys. I think that I was meeting like 5 men. And then one guy chose me. And so I looked at his,
Profile.
His profile. That was the only dating service I ever joined. But anyway, so when I read his profile, he reminded me so much of my first 2 ex-husbands that I could not flip that page quick enough. So I took the card in. In those days, there were no internet services. Took the card in and dropped it off at the desk, and I was down the hallway when the gal was running down the hallway, shaking the card in her hand, and she says, Syndee, you checked the wrong box. And I said, no, I checked the right box. And she goes, do you know this guy doesn't pick anybody, and everybody picks him? And I said, well, I still checked the right box. Well, she talked me into meeting him. So I agreed to coffee, yes.
What exactly did she say that made you change your mind to at least meet him?
She kept after me, and
Huh?
I just didn't want to go through another divorce, and he looked like he could have been the brother to the other 2, on paper and in photograph. So I met him for coffee, and as I was walking through the cafe, my stomach was doing flip-flops, and I had this video in my head of Divorce 3. And so I sat down for 5 minutes, and I don't think I heard a word he said, and I thanked him for meeting me, and I wished him a good day, and I ran out the door. So a girlfriend was meeting me from Atlanta, and I'm in California, and so another friend invited me to her restaurant. She was having this fabulous evening with a band and fun, and so here we are, looking for a table outside. And there wasn't a table big enough for 3 because another friend was joining us. And my husband and his best friend were sitting at a table for 4. So, of course, these 2 men looked at us and said, well, come and join us. And so we did. So when the band started playing, my husband asked me to dance. So while we were dancing, we were doing a California swing dance. And he had this weird extra step. And it was like we were together for 30 years. And after we finished the dance, the owner of the restaurant said, Syndee, you have to come with us girls down to the bar that's open till 1 and teach us how to dance like that. And then at the bar, she goes, Harvey isn't looking for a girlfriend. Because, you couldn't miss that there was something special with us. And
but if he had an extra step in his dance, how did you keep up with him? Did you have an extra step too?
You know what? It was just magic. Meant to be magic. And so
Sounds like a song.
We've been together ever since.
Really? So how does he tell the story?
Well, he may not remember it all now, but he just holds my hand and says she's mine.
Oh.
Yeah. So
that love story is right up there with the best of them.
Well, and he'll look at me and he'll say, he'll thank me for taking such good care.
Oh. So what were you going through from when you first learned about the diagnosis? How long do you think he had it before you actually decided to go in and get a diagnosis? Sometimes these things take years because the spouse is in denial about the symptoms, that the red flags, the warning signs. So from diagnosis to treatment, tell us what kind of symptoms he started with and what it progressed to.
Well, there are two things I want to preface this with. First of all, I'm a business consultant and intuitive coach, and I'm all about solutions. So there was never any denial for me. Still isn't. I'm a very hands-on, practical kind of go get it done and figure it out kind of gal. And then the other thing is that I knew going in that Harvey's mother died from Alzheimer's disease. I didn't really know about it because, the people in my family just die of old age and actually pretty healthy. So, I don't even take one med today, and he's on like 7.
Wow.
So I noticed that he had a few little things going on, like irritation that he didn't used to have and a little memory. But everybody gets that once they're past 50 or 60, right?
Well, I do.
And so we were having a vacation in Sedona, Arizona, and we had 3 sets. There were actually 3 sets of couples, and we had 2 timeshares. So we were having dinner at the bigger timeshare where 2 couples were sharing, and Harvey wanted to go to our timeshare, which is 1 building away, and it's, a really cool resort and windy sidewalks and, buildings placed everywhere, foliage. And I said, honey, I'm going to finish my wine and then maybe have a cup of coffee, and I'll meet you in a half an hour or so. So he left, I did what I said, and then I said goodbye and walked over to our timeshare, which was the next building over. Mm-hmm. And there was no Harvey. And I called him on the phone and I said, "Where are you?" He says, "I'm down at the pool." And I said, "What the heck are you doing at the pool? It's 10 o'clock at night." And he goes, "Well, I couldn't find our place."
Oh.
And I said, "Well, you sit right there and I will be right down." So I went down and got him, brought him back to our timeshare suite. And when we got in bed and started to go to sleep, I knew my life would be changing very soon.
Mm. So when he told you he couldn't find the place, instead of you freaking out and saying, "What do you mean you can't find the place? We've been living here for so many years," you just automatically says, "Stay there, I'll come and get you," as if you knew there was a problem. Is that true?
I don't freak out. I get stuff done. I just take care of business. And, I think I just intuitively knew that's what was happening. And I got an appointment when we got home, got him in there, and I was shocked at the stupid test they give someone for Alzheimer's. In fact, that's part of why I wrote the book, is because I want people to know what I've learned in my observations and how I've helped my husband know who I am after 10 years and probably more like 11 or 12, and that they have choices and options, and, the doctors are not God.
Yeah.
The bottom line is doctors can only prescribe, do surgery, give physical therapy, and diagnose, and that's about it.
And practice.
So they don't really work.
Physicians.
They don't really work toward solutions. They don't really work toward root causes or alternative meds and alternative treatments that you can use that make a big difference. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I've uncovered, and that's what I'm sharing so that people can have choices and keep their loved ones. It took me a darn long time to find that man, and I am not giving him up that easy.
So were there other symptoms that maybe you buried into your subconscious that that this really wasn't your first clue, that maybe you saw things? I mean, obviously the first one would be that his mother had Alzheimer's. That had to be in the back of your mind somewhere, and maybe some other times, because I find it hard to believe that this would be the first indication to you, the first red flag.
I don't really remember being around anyone who had that kind of a disorder. I mean, my grandmother at 86 and my mother at 84 had brilliant minds and remembered more than I cared for them to remember. And so the things, and I'm not someone who is in denial. So what I remember is he was getting ready for a trip, and I was trying to put things together for him to make the trip easier, and he snapped at me a couple of times, and that got my attention. And I think part of it is when people have Alzheimer's, they have a harder time thinking 2 steps ahead, 3 steps ahead. And I'm a 10 steps ahead thinker because of my profession and my background. So when he snapped when I was trying to help him, it got my attention, but I really didn't think about it. I mean, I've had a very, very busy career at the time. I think I had either just sold a business, a brick and mortar, or I was just in the process of selling. So, I've always had a very busy career and didn't really think about it. So it didn't get my attention until the trip to Sedona.
Wow. Well, we're so excited to hear your story of what you did differently, because it sounds like you are doing things that nobody else is doing, and you got some results that nobody else was getting. And we'll get into that, but I want to explore a little more about, leading up to that. So first, let's take a break, and we will be right back with Syndee Hendricks and Adrienne Gruberg.
Welcome, caregivers. Thank you so much for finding your way to our community of loving and supportive caregivers. We as caregivers understand and know the day-to-day feelings of guilt, fear, and loneliness. But guess what? There is hope. I, Dave the Caregiver's Caregiver, along with my team of experts and caring caregivers, have made this site just for you. We are a community of caregivers that understands and supports you wherever you are in your journey. We are a place to connect with other caregivers, but more importantly, a place to get practical, actionable help. There are lots of ways for you to get support. First of all, you can download our welcome pack. This will get you started on your Thrive journey. Next, you can ask and get answers to your questions by posting them here in our private Facebook groups. You can also get live online support by attending one of our live weekly Connect webinars. You can get practical, actionable advice by listening to our weekly podcast. You can hear and read other stories about other caregivers' experiences. Plus, add your own in our weekly Share Your Story forum, posted every Tuesday in the Facebook group. You can access essential resources and download practical Thrive Solutions packs, all of which are geared to help you thrive as a caregiver. We know funds are tight, so we offer all of our individual Thrive Solutions packs. Or for even a better deal, you can get lifetime access to all of our resources. Again, we're here to support you and help you thrive and to enjoy your life as a caregiver. And remember, this is a place to get hope, not just cope.
And we're back with Adrienne Gruberg, my co-host, and Syndee Hendricks, writer of the book about dementia. What's the title again?
Me, Harvey, and ALZ, How I Kept My Husband Coherent for a Decade Plus with Alzheimer's Disease.
The only Harvey I ever knew was the Harvey the rabbit. And that's almost like Harvey and me, like you're talking about your rabbit.
Interesting you say that, David, because that's what a lot of the guys called Harvey, was the rabbit.
Harvey the rabbit. So tell me, as you got the diagnosis and you kind of were looking at the tests that the doctors gave and all of that, I assume it's the same test that I keep getting every 6 months because my mother had dementia. I want to make sure it doesn't creep up on me. And, one of the questions is, obviously, what's your name? Where do you live? What city are you in? What state are you in? What's the address? What's your phone number? And then they start getting a little tricky. Count backwards from 100 in increments of 7. And then they give you a long list of things to see how many you can remember. Then they'll tell a story with lots of details to see how many of the details you can remember. Is that the kind of test that they gave, or is it different for Alzheimer's?
Some of those things, but some of the questions they asked, I told him at the end, I said, Harvey had no interest in any of that before he had this disease. Mm-hmm. So how would he have interest in remembering it after?
So it was really too generalized and wasn't specific for him.
Exactly.
So what adjustments did you have to make in your lifestyle, and during the whole process, did you ever have more arguments or suffer burnout? What was the low point of all of this?
I think the hardest thing for me is seeing him deteriorate a little bit more physically, because Harvey 10 years ago was up on the roof. He was, they called him back to work. He was working full time. He wouldn't retire because they kept wanting him to come back. He painted the house and the fence. We have a 7-foot fence every year. So,
Wow.
He had the kind of body that, 30 and 40-year-olds couldn't keep up with. So to go from, most people at 40 and 50 start feeling like, gee, I can't continue horseback riding or skiing or racquetball because my body is worn out. Well, that didn't happen to him. And so for him to have to struggle has been a struggle for me to watch, because he never had to before.
Wow.
And he's still got a great set of legs.
So how old was he when he was diagnosed?
He was diagnosed 10 years ago, next month. And so that would be, 98? 18?
08.
No, that would be 08.
How old was he?
70.
70. Okay, and he's still alive.
He is.
At 80.
Is. And believe it or not, he's the one who's kept me young, because I am a worker bee. For me, work isn't like work because I love what I do.
Wow. So what are his symptoms today that you deal with today?
Well, I got to tell you, it's very impressive that, I travel for my work. And I think it was 2 years ago, I told him I was leaving about 3 or 4 in the morning to catch my early morning flight, and that I would see him in a week. And he asked where I was going, and I told him. And so when I got up to leave at, 4, he goes, well, honey, you have a good conference in Dallas.
Were you going to Dallas?
Yes, he remembered what I had told him before he went to sleep.
Wow.
2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously he knows who you are. Did he ever have a period where he didn't know who you were?
Not yet.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Not yet.
Adrienne had her own experience with that, and cancer on top of it.
Well, Harvey and I both had cancer, so we've been able to work through all that and still keep going. But you know what? I think, there are a lot of things I've done, which is why I've decided to write the book. Because you know what? I'm not one of those open book people. I'm very private. And it's taken a lot for me to write this book, and I'm still not sure I really want to. But I know that I have to, because there's so much I've learned that I really want others to know about.
Well, I must say you are the most positive guest with the most positive attitude that we've had on this subject, because usually, it can get kind of bogged down in the details of the symptoms and so on. But,
well, the hardest part for me has been what I have coined pre-grief.
Anticipatory, yeah.
And once I figured out that, not everybody has a time period where they know their days are limited.
Right.
And I feel like I have been given a huge gift, marrying an older guy anyway, who's kept me young, that I've had 10 years to know that he's probably going to go before me. And I started changing my thinking, as I do a lot, in that it was a gift instead of something negative that I should be grieving over. Well, he's still here with me. And we still have a lot of fun. We laugh and, people tease us sometimes. I took him to a neurologist to see if there was anything else that they could do for him a couple months ago. And he's flirting with the doctor and her assistant and, touching the gal doing his blood pressure. And I'm laughing saying, hasn't changed a bit. He still remembers he's a big flirt.
So it sure sounds like that he is progressing very slowly.
Well, I'm giving it my best.
What medications are they giving him, or therapies, or how are you treating him at home that is conducive to his slowing down the deterioration process? They always say that jigsaw puzzles keep the mind active, use it or lose it. So what assortment, what cocktail of things are you doing?
Well, I think one of the most important things that I do is I read everything I can get my hands on about the disease. And when I found out that, cholesterol medication was controversial for someone with Alzheimer's, it made sense to me because you don't want to limit the fat in the blood if the brain is made of fat and you have a brain disorder. I mean, as a common person, that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. So I asked. The best doctor I found for Harvey was the doctor who teaches all the other doctors out here about aging and Alzheimer's. And this very renowned doctor would not take him off cholesterol meds. So I read up on it, and I called my sister-in-law, who's a nurse, and I told her I wanted to get him off that and told her my plan. And she goes, well, it makes sense to me. So I started cutting him back because you have to wean them off that. And so I cut him back, and so when I asked the doctor again, like a year and a half later, maybe two, because his numbers were fine, and he finally agreed,
cholesterol.
And he says, yes, and he finally agreed, and he said, well, we have to wean him off that medication. And I said, well, he's only taken a half of one every 3 days. And so he yelled at me, you can't be changing his meds. And I said, and you don't move fast enough. I was really irritated. And I thought, you're talking to the wrong lady, mister. And so I fired him after that visit. I thought, I have to have a doctor who can listen and understand common sense and react, not a year and a half later. I mean, Harvey'd probably be dead by now if I hadn't done that. So, because, I mean, it makes sense.
It makes
right?
perfect sense, yeah.
So I took him to my doctor, who's a female, and she is an internist. And she reviewed everything, and she changed up his meds, and I'm like, thank you, God, for giving me the strength to do this for him. And she's been remarkable. But he's on donizepam, 10 milligrams, and memetine. I heard about memetine research and asked her if she felt that would be a good choice for him, and she agreed. So he's on those two meds for his Alzheimer's. But I think what I've learned, the biggest lesson I've learned in all this is that you don't listen to the experts because nobody knows your loved one better than you do. And we all have common sense. You have to use it and figure things out intuitively for yourself. And by that I mean all the books say jigsaw puzzles and read and games and do this and do that. And I bought all the games and got him the crosswords, and he didn't want any part of that crap. And that's exactly how he told me. And so I thought, he loves TV because he never got to watch it because he worked a lot. So I found all the channels that he liked, and so he gets to watch TV as often as he likes. And do you know, he can recite the commercials back on every show, even today, by memory.
Do doctors dementia recommend TV as a therapy? That's interesting.
Not that I've heard. But see, my point is, you have to figure out what your loved one likes and give that to them. And, you know, I have dinner with him every night unless I'm traveling for work. And we have fun, we laugh, we talk about the show, and that's what he likes. So you have to figure it out and you have to deliver it. Whatever they like, you know, they'll tell you.
Yeah, that's a good point. My wife watches a lot of television as well. You know, she suffered a traumatic brain
I guess it would be called an injury because she had a stroke. Oxygen and blood was restricted to the brain, and she is paralyzed on the right side and now has global aphasia. So everything going out is tweaked. Everything coming in is fine. She can read, she can listen, she can understand. But I think television has been a great therapy for her. And we got her an iPad, and she loves, going through Facebook, and she still has trouble writing a post because she can't remember how to spell the words or to put a sentence together properly. So
well, she's in good company with Facebook users. I see that every day.
Yeah.
So she's here in Hawaii with me for 26 days. She started on this 500-piece puzzle, this big round one. If you've been watching Facebook, you know what it looks like. And it was a slow start at first. Her goal was to finish by the time she went home. And about halfway through the trip, I really didn't think she was going to make it because it was just so slow. And puzzles are slow in the beginning anyway. But then she picked up some momentum, and it just started going really fast. I had to take pictures like every other day just to show everybody the progress. And she finished 3 days early, and now she's going to give it as a gift to the wonderful manager here at the Outrigger, who is just a sweetheart and makes it possible for us to stay here because of the very affordable rates for this beautiful room that we have. I just have to share it with you. I don't know if you can see that.
No, we can't see you.
Been there. It's a beautiful place. That's one of Harvey's favorite places to go. We've been to Hawaii maybe 4 or 5 times.
It's our favorite place, definitely.
Yeah. So, see, you've already figured it out. You found out what your wife likes, and you're making sure she gets big doses.
I've been doing
this. And then,
this
of course, all the love, right?
22 years. I can't believe how long it's been. Because, in many ways, it seems just like yesterday. In many ways, it seems like I've been doing this forever, 100 years. But, we both have a great attitude. And you mentioned before about treating each day as if it was your last. I have a friend who wrote a book about that, and so for the last 6 months or so, that's all I tell people. Just act like it's your last day on Earth. How would you live this day differently if you knew you were going to die? Adrienne, if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, what would you do differently today in Manhattan?
That's not a fair question. I just came back from a 6-day road trip, and I am exhausted.
So the last thing you want to do is go anywhere. So maybe you just want to relax in your home.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I'll help you with that one.
Okay.
Eat chocolate, because you know what? You never have enough chocolate.
That's right.
Yes,
So-
but I have a little different twist on that, in that we all
what is
have a choice about how we perceive things and how we think about things. And we can either think of things and all the positivity in it, or we can think about the negative things and we can complain. And I remember as a young child that when I was an adult, my life would be very different than how it was when I was a child. And I have made sure that's happened every day of my life, that I would have positivity, because why not? Why not?
Are the doctors kind of amazed at Harvey's progress of 10 years? I mean, what are they telling you? Are they telling you that it's a very slow transition? I'm sure he gets CAT scans, PET scans, whatever they are.
Nope. Doesn't get any of those.
He did get one, though.
Yes.
Are the doctors asking you what you are doing? Are they curious?
They do. They do. Yes.
Are they receptive?
Well, I pick and choose what I tell them, because I already know, I already know that they're about academia, and they're about, all they can do is what I mentioned. They can prescribe drugs, they can do surgery, they can give physical therapy, they can diagnose, and that's it. And I'm all about alternatives and what else can you do that's not so negative and not so invasive.
Mm.
So Harvey was prescribed with diabetes, I think, 5 years or so before he got Alzheimer's. So, I mean, nobody in my family's ever had that, so I knew nothing about diabetes. So I researched and figured it out, and I didn't realize it was such a debilitating disease, so there were a couple different kinds. And so he had type 2, so I changed his diet. He wasn't very happy. But and I figured out how to control it with diet, and 3 months later, he was able to get off the meds. And so he had to go back on because he's not mobile. And even though I have kept his A1C, which is the 90-day look at your blood sugar, in within a good range, they still need to keep it under control.
Yeah.
So, and they say that diabetes is tied to Alzheimer's, and it's got a connection. They're still figuring out the details of that. So if anybody out there has diabetes, you'd be very wise to keep those numbers in line and to learn about how you can do a better job of controlling.
Does Harvey drink alcohol?
We were neither one of us very big drinkers, though we did have, he liked gin and tonic, and I love wine. So we would have that with dinners when we go. We always travel with friends. But now, you know what? With all the meds he's on, I don't really have much alcohol in the house except to cook with. Because I don't want to risk him mixing the alcohol with the with the drugs. And so I did take him out to Mexican for his birthday. He loves Mexican food. And he did get to have a margarita, so once in a while.
I have 2 questions before our next break. Does Harvey know he has dementia? Because my mother-in-law is in denial about it, and she's just torturing herself, and she's become delusional that all these people are breaking into her house and stealing this and stealing that, but she's just paranoid because she's hiding the stuff, can't remember that, she would rather believe that somebody is breaking in her house 5 times a day than to believe that there's something wrong with her memory. So was Harvey, in denial in the beginning? And the second question was, do you leave him alone during those weeks that you are away?
Harvey has never been in denial. He knew that his mother had it and talked about it. And sometimes he's in denial about certain things now that when it's something he doesn't want to do. And I think it's more of, creativity to get out of something he doesn't want to do. And your second question was...
So he knows he has dementia, and he knows what dementia is. Does he want to know more about it? Does he, read up on dementia, or Alzheimer's, rather?
He could care less. He knows I will take care of everything.
He knows, right.
And the second question, can he stay alone for how many days or what period of time?
I had a woman staying with us for, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago to help her out. Because she had a struggle, and we have a big house, so she was there with us. And so when things first started happening, I was comfortable that there was somebody in the house at nighttime when I was traveling. And then
that's
3
what
years
I do with my
ago,
wife. I let someone sleep where, because I don't want her getting up in the middle of the night falling. So go on.
Right. And then 3 years ago, I decided that I did not want to leave him alone at all, because what he would do he wouldn't answer his cell phone. And then I would dash home thinking he was laying on the floor needing help, and he just left it somewhere.
Right.
And I was so mad and so that's when I said, that's it. I'm going to have some people keeping an eye so I don't, stress out myself.
Yeah, I can leave my wife alone 1 or 2 nights, 3 at the most. I've got cameras all around the place, each room. And I've got one of the cameras that actually has a microphone I can hear in her bedroom and stuff. So that's what technology. But anything over that, I like to have somebody stay with.
Well,
me.
I have both.
Good.
Because I travel still. Not so much this year because I have, I finished 2 books last year, and I'll finish 2 books this year by the end of the year. Yeah. So the other books were about other things people always ask me about.
Yeah.
So,
I have a gas station, so my second book was about the gas station, getting hosed, secrets, confessions, and tales of a gas station owner.
ooh, but that's interesting. I'll have to
It
talk to you
is.
off air about that. But mine was actually, people ask me how I get so much done. Because, I'm older, I'm not one of the skinny women, and I talk kind of slow. And, I've outworked just about everybody I know, young or old or whatever. And they want to know how I do it. So here's the book I wrote on that. And this has helped me get everything done that I've had
Great
to
title.
do for my husband. Thank you.
Great title.
So,
Well, listen,
how
we're
I
going to
get
take a
sick.
break. Don't go away. We will be right back.
David Nassaney.
Best-selling author Dave Nassaney.
Dave Nassaney is a best-selling author.
Mr. Dave Nassaney.
Thank you.
So you're needed.
I am needed.
You are very
Yes.
much needed.
The woman I loved had suffered a massive stroke. They tell you in the event of an emergency, oxygen mask will drop. Put your mask on first before you help your loved one with their mask. For the next 2 years, our lives had become a living hell. Everyone has one of these. It's called a cell phone. You turn it on, you punch in your number. Hello, Mom. I need help. Grandma's driving me crazy. I realize there are so many other caregivers out there who are hurting and feeling lost and alone. And I didn't want them to hurt anymore. So now I host a popular iTunes podcast, the Caregiver Radio Show. And I even shared the stage with Suzanne Summers at Harvard. Come and join our community of caregivers. Let us love on you. Let us support you.
Dave is an amazing man. I was in tears when I heard his story.
Dave is really my idol because he created something for caretakers. And I was a caretaker for my father.
Every caregiver's life is a love story. Let me help you make that love story one of hope and triumph. Thank you very much.
And we're back with Syndee Hendricks and Adrienne Gruberg, and we're talking about Alzheimer's. So let's talk about your book and how you're helping other caregivers, especially caregivers of dementia and Alzheimer's. How similar is dementia and Alzheimer's from your experience?
Well, dementia is the category, and Alzheimer's is one of the ailments within the category. And I just got my book jacket, and I wanted to share.
Oh,
Isn't
wow.
that cute?
Yeah, you
And
said
I
that to
drew.
me. I didn't realize it was your jacket.
It is, and I drew the little character I call Al's looking out over the A. You got to have a sense of humor with this, really.
Absolutely.
How many pages?
It's going to be around 200 because I put a lot of good, juicy stuff in there so that people can get some ideas of what they may want to do or try. I'm also creating a companion workbook, which will have 8.5 by 11 forms that I use. In fact, the caregivers that come in tell me I should start a home for people, and I said, honey, I have a home for people. Right now, I'm sharing how I've made it so streamlined and easy.
So this is your 5th book? How many have you written?
No, this one is the 11th book.
Oh, wow.
And the companion workbook will be my 12th book.
So are you self-publishing these, or you have a publisher, or what?
Well, I have 3 publishers, and they're all friends.
Well, that's nice.
It is nice, and
So
I
you,
have.
you give they take turns publishing your book.
Well, it depends on what I'm writing, and
the topic is.
and I arranged for a book signing event, and I invited 2 of my publishers together at that one. So, but one of the publishers does a compilation or an anthology group of books, and she invited me to write. I think I've written in a couple of her books. In fact, of my 12 books, 4 of them are anthologies. And I was just invited to write in another one, so that's interesting.
Now, you talked about anticipatory grief before. I'm sorry, but I got to ask this question because there's people watching. in all different phases of life with their dementia spouse or loved one. But do you think about that day that Harvey is going to be called to meet his creator, and how you're going to handle it? How are you preparing for it? What plans do you have if and when that happens? Because I mean, you could die first. I mean, you never know. Tomorrow's not promised. But if that happens, have you made plans with who's going to be Harvey's caregiver, or how you're going to transition out of the caregiving role? A lot of people have trouble with that. Adrienne has a group just for people who are no longer caregivers, and a lot of them get depressed because it's like they were so consumed with that. I don't think this will happen to you because you've got a lot of irons in the fire. But it's like, oh no, what do I do now? Their identity was so wrapped up into caregiving that they go into depression. So you ever thought about any of that?
Well, I have a very healthy attitude about
Sounds like it.
Passing on to the next life, and I have no fear. I'm the one on the airplane when there's turbulence that I'm just looking around wondering why everybody's so upset, because, why get excited? It's either going to happen or not, and you're either going to be here or not, and why get excited about it? So, and my husband's the same way. So we know that eventually we'll be together again, and we have a very healthy attitude. We made cremation plans probably 15 years ago, and I had his sister sign a statement making sure everybody knew what he wanted, so I don't have to fight with anybody. And it just makes it simpler that way. So
I have aunts that still won't talk to me because of the fact that I gave my father a Protestant funeral instead of a Catholic funeral, and people get mad at some of the silliest things.
Don't they? I just don't get that. I mean, pull up your big girl and big boy panties and let's just get on with it and do what is right. I fought with my siblings for my grandmother's funeral, and I'm the youngest, believe it or not, and I said, look, it's what she wanted. Get over yourself. Wow. All four of you.
You were the first guest on my show who was talking about dementia or Alzheimer's that has such a positive outlook, and that things actually are going well, And besides, when life gives you lemons, you got to turn it into lemonade somehow. I mean, people look at me and they say, oh, you poor guy, your poor wife, you lost your wife 22 years now. I says, I don't look at myself that way. I mean, I just have a normal life. The first half was a little different from the second half, but we still love each other. We still travel. We still do things together. We still argue sometimes. And we're still in love, and so they don't understand how I could just adjust like that, because it's actually called acceptance in the grief process. You just accept the new normal and you move on with your life, Well,
I can share my take on that with you, and that is, in my coaching and consulting business, people would write down things I said, and they'd say, oh, that's so good, I got to write it down. So I started writing my own stuff down, and that's one of my other books, Insights from an Intuitive. And one of my quotes in there is, it's not as important what falls in your lap, but what's more important is how you deal with it.
Absolutely.
And that's how I live life. It's how you deal with it.
Yep.
So,
sounds like you and I are a lot alike, Adrienne.
Well, I try. I certainly try to do that myself. I let go of things. I know when my energy will just be wasted, and let nature take its course. Do what I can.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly it.
Yeah, and I try on my site and the Facebook page to make sure that the energy that we're putting out is in that direction.
Yes.
Very important.
Yeah, and
well,
Adrienne
I have a
is
rule.
living her life, She found a boyfriend, and
wow.
Yeah.
You go, girl.
Yeah.
What percentage of caregivers whose spouse dies, Adrienne, are doing what you're doing? I've met so many people who say, no. When I ask them, are you considering, marrying again? No. I'm a one-man woman. I'm a one-woman man. And What are the percentages? Are you the anomaly, or are you the common?
I really think that's changing now. I mean, I know that my mother-in-law was 63, which was how old I was when my husband passed, when her husband passed. For her, she never so much as had lunch with another man. I mean, like, that was it. She was a one-man woman, and it was out of the question. But I've met women in my summer community who are in their 80s, and the first time it happened, someone came up to me and said, "Are you dating?" And I wondered if they were going to fix me up with their son or something. No, they wanted to know if I was dating because they wanted to know how to do it. Because a lot of women who've been caring for their husbands for years and years and years, and I'm sure men are the same way, are really, have accepted it, will do everything they can for the person that they love, but they're eager to get on with their lives.
Well, it sounds like you have a book in you to write, Adrienne.
I think there are enough
don't get her started on a book.
Yeah, people want to know.
Well, it's interesting. I was at a caregiving conference where people were talking about life after caregiving, and there was a panel of about 5 people, and I was the first one who started to talk about the fact that there can be a dating life and love life after, caregiving. It doesn't mean that you loved your husband or wife any less. Life goes on.
I don't know.
Your husband actually gave you permission, and in fact, he even told you what not to do, right?
He gave me the names of the 3 people that I couldn't date. We would have been married 13 years tomorrow. It was,
wow.
And as far as how many people want to go, there are lots of people who are really just afraid of being hurt, of finding themselves in a caregiving situation again.
Or just afraid, period. The whole process.
Or just afraid of intimacy on any level.
Or like a junior hire is afraid to pick up that phone, and just fear keeps them from doing what they want to do.
Right.
Well, I'm just convinced I will never find anybody like Harvey.
I know
Probably
that I will never find anyone like my late husband. I didn't expect to, but I needed companionship. I needed someone else in my life, and so
it's not good for a man or woman to be alone. I think God said that.
I had to try.
Yeah, and it's so funny. The first person that her husband told her to stay away from, that's the first person who started hitting on you, right?
No, that's the first person that showed up. That was the first person that showed up on the dating site as a match for me.
Oh, they matched you up, huh?
They matched me up with one of the 3.
See, your husband had such wisdom, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's hard to believe that this hour has just zoomed on by. How can we get a hold of you, Syndee, if somebody wants to, read one of your 11 books or be coached or whatever?
Well, my website is myname.com. That's Syndee Hendricks, HENDRICKS.com. And I've started a Facebook page called Me, Harvey, and ALZ. ALZ, Sanity with Alzheimer's.
Okay, and that's due out. You don't have an exact date yet. Somewhere in the next.
No, I am hoping for the next few weeks, and I'd love it to be by September. But I've got editor and medical researcher putting footnotes in it as we speak, and don't want to rush that process. So.
No.
Very grateful that you've invited me today. My passion is to be able to help people with ways to keep the one they loved with them as long as they can and coherent.
No, it's been a very interesting show. It was a one-of-a-kind show because, like I says, you're living proof that taking positive actions and maybe trying different methods that the doctors don't know about or maybe even disagree upon are helping, are prolonging his life, prolonging the quality of life, not just the quantity of life. Because I'm against, giving Alzheimer's patients these medications that will let them live another 10 years, but the quality of life is not there. I mean, I wouldn't want to live another 10 years if I didn't know who my wife was. So quality is so important, and it sounds like you've got that. So God bless you. Adrienne, how do we get a hold of you?
It's Adrienne, ADRIENNE, at thecaregiverspace.org. And the Caregiver Space is the Facebook page, and you can find us online.
And again, a reminder, all our live shows become recorded pod and videocasts on our membership website, caregiverdave.com. Please join us. There's tremendous value there to help you stay alive and burnout free with coaching and accountability. And with that, I will say until next Wednesday, we will see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Caregivers Caregiver radio program with Dave Nassaney.
Stop broadcast.